Hello, everyone. Welcome to the network. Welcome to the Two Dads edition.
Wait, that's not it.
Start again. What's up, fat fucker?
Two Dads, Gen X edition. That's a great beginning.
There it is. I know you hate that
Stop
so
that.
much.
That's horrible.
I love
can't
it.
stand that sound.
It is so loud, too.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Who introed last time?
I was thinking it was definitely somebody.
Was it? I can't remember. It may have been me.
I think it was you.
It was me?
So therefore, it's going to be you.
Okay. Wait, if I did it last time, then I'm doing it again?
So let's just go with how's it hanging?
Little to the left.
Why is it always to the left?
I'm dominant right-handed. I don't know.
You're shaping it to the left. There's actually a study that shows that it takes the shape of how you masturbate, so it's kind of funny.
All right, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about books.
Books,
reading, but really, the only entertainment that makes you read the credits first.
What does that mean? What do you mean?
You're reading words.
Well,
like the end credits. How many end credits have you actually watched before Marvel?
none.
Yeah.
Like, none ever.
And now I'm like, I wonder if there's anybody I know. So I'm like reading. Hun Chan Tong. Sing Tan Dong. Johnny
All the
Smith.
different countries that they filmed in, all that kind of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, like Thunderbolts.
Yeah.
I mean, I was amazed at
Yeah, I saw it last night with my daughter.
how many production studios to make those movies. I was like, holy crap.
All the different editing companies, or like for the 3D and the the CGI and stuff. It's like, I thought it was like one company they used. No, there's like 50.
He's waving his hands up in the air like he don't care as he's describing that.
Woot.
That's why you gotta get the video so you can see, people can see how animated you are. Woo!
So, did you read a lot as a kid?
No, and that's actually part of the reason. I mean, I did, I didn't.
Didn't?
It's one of the things that, you actually have a funny story about your daughter, which
kind
of is comparable to the Pizza Hut reward program.
Oh, yeah?
And so for every 10
Wait,
books
I
you
could have gotten a lot of pizza?
Yeah, you got a free
'Cause I read a lot when I was a kid.
pan for every 10 books you read.
Dang, dude. Hey, before we go on, just wanted to ask everybody to, if you like what we talk about, if you like our episodes, like and subscribe. It really helps us out.
And please comment, too, about our videos, what we could do differently and what you liked about it. But let's go ahead and 2 dads this shit.
Right on. Let's do it. So, you didn't read a lot. I did read a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
So I could have gotten lots of pizza.
I kind of cheated. I always did the little picture books.
The Cliff Notes.
Yeah, the Cliff Notes. And
I don't think my kids know what that is.
No, probably not. No, they do.
Cliff Notes?
Yeah, by the
You'd
time
actually go and like buy the Cliff Notes for like War and Peace, right?
Oh, Kira totally does. I know kids do that all the time. It's basically considered cheating.
Yeah. No, my kids though, they not all of them, but my daughter Olivia, she didn't like reading at all. Like, she wouldn't read. I would encourage her to, like, I used to have, like, you'd have to read for the summer, instead of doing a bunch of other stuff, video games. Well, I would try and get them to read. And she just didn't like reading. So there's a friend of ours, and I can't remember how to pronounce her last name. It's Regina Cioros. She wrote a book called On Little Wings. She's our friend Jeff's daughter, or sister.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Not daughter, sister. Anyway, so like I'd gotten the book to support her too, and I thought it was something that Olivia would like, and so I told her I'd give her $100 if she read the book.
Bribes.
And so, I mean, that's what it took, and she was like, "All right, fine, for $100, I'll read the book." So she was reading the book, and she finished it, and told me about the story and all that kind of stuff, and I gave her $100, and I asked her if she actually liked reading, and she said, "Well, when I started it, all I wanted was the $100, but I really liked the story."
Nice. Did she write more than one book? It's like a series.
Yeah, there's I know, I think she has like 3 or 4 now.
Oh, cool.
But that was her first one.
Yeah, well, send the info because I'll put it in the description.
Cool. Yeah.
That we can get it on there. For me, I really struggled with reading because the West Coast was actually farther behind on the educational side of English. And so when we moved here, they had already taught a lot of stuff that wasn't taught yet. So like pronouns, nouns, verbs, sentence structure, all that stuff. So I really, as a kid, I really struggled with reading and had a hard time with words and spelling, and I still suck at spelling. But I was one of the original Sylvan kids.
Oh, Sylvan Learning Centers, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it was 5th grade. They actually talked about they probably would have to hold me back because my reading was so bad. That I had a hard time understanding a lot of the concepts and stuff. And so the one thing with Sylvan, it was really nice. You know, I had to go and they made me read. And one of my favorite books was Where the Red Fern Grows.
Oh, yeah.
It's
a classic.
Which is actually banned in a lot of states.
What?
We'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
And so it was interesting because I had to write stories, I had to read stories, and I had to do book reports. And as I did that, I started to like reading. And so I learned that if your child struggles with reading, it's most likely that they're struggling with reading. That's why they don't like to read. And they're having a hard time understanding the concept of the story, what's behind it. And going back to the Cliff Notes, I had a teacher that purposely would ask questions that would not be in the Cliff Notes. Like, what was the color of the bench that Edgar Allan Poe had an affair with Peter Schilling's wife, who wrote, Peter Schilling's wife, Mary Schilling, wrote Frankenstein, which they actually stole that story from Peter Schilling with her. But it's interesting. Anyway, as that side note. So,
but they would ask like questions that were not the what is it? What's the website where you can like look up stuff that's like an encyclopedia?
Wiki?
But yeah, Wiki. No, is that
Wikifaults? Yeah,
Wikifaults.
Yeah, and so it just definitely made it harder, like made it better for me to read, but I never liked reading until I found Dragonlance. And, and that story resonated because it was like, The Hobbit, but it was easier to read, mystical, and it had like 40, 50 books, so I just started reading all those series and really got into it. And then I started branching off into harder stuff. And ironically, when I got to high school, my ex-wife, she loves reading, and I found that I had read a lot of the books that she didn't, and I just found that weird, like Mice and Men, Tales of Two Cities.
The classics, yeah.
War and Peace.
You read War and Peace?
Yeah.
Man, that's a big one.
Yeah, it was
I haven't
hard.
read that one yet.
I forced myself to read that one.
I read the Odyssey and the Iliad.
That one I have not.
Yeah.
What's that one?
Homer?
Yeah.
Oh man, there's a movie coming out about it actually pretty
it?
soon. Yeah, it's pretty cool, but it's a Greek tragedy kind of thing. But I didn't get into it, but I read it. But my favorite was sci-fi. One of my favorite authors is Orson Scott Card.
Oh yeah.
And there's a movie a couple years ago, Ender's Game.
Yeah.
Which I heard that he had like offers to do a movie before then, but he didn't. What I read was that he wasn't satisfied with the CGI and the what they could recreate. He wanted it to be more true to what he imagined.
Yeah.
And like Ender's Game is a good movie, but it's very, very fast. It goes through the story, but it goes through it really quickly. They could have added at least another hour or done like a saga kind of movie series, right? But I thought his, like I've read Worms and Ships of Earth and all these other ones that he's written where it's just he does this thing where he draws you in.
Yeah.
So like early chapters are shorter, then you get some bigger chapters, but it's very descriptive. And so he was one of my first ones that I really got into. I was like 10 years old reading these novels with a flashlight under my blanket so that my brother wouldn't be awake on like a Tuesday night at 2 a.m.
Yeah. You're like, sorry.
I'd get like 4 hours of sleep because I wanted to finish it. I got into it so much. And then one of my other favorites is Louis L'Amour, who writes a lot of Westerns. And they're fast reads, or 180 pages or so, 200 pages. But what I like about his stories are it's this guy, this stranger that kind of wanders into town, and he kind of stumbles into this scenario where, the small rancher's being forced out by the big rancher who's doing criminal activity or whatever, some that kind of a theme where it's the little guy is being squashed on by the big guy and this stranger coming into town.
So like the American Story.
kind of the American story, but that the guy coming into town stands up for the little guy and is able to, that turns the tide, and so the baron, the land baron, or the cattle baron gets squashed because this one guy decided to stand up for what was right.
I think I saw that movie, Silverado.
Yeah.
It's pretty much, you just describe Silverado to a T. I'm like, oh, Silverado.
Well, and that theme is a common theme, right?
Pretty much the Western theme.
Yeah, and that's
Red
most
Dead
of his
game.
books. But I like the way he tells a story, and there's usually like a love interest, so common themes. But I just like the way that he writes.
Well, and I think when you do find an author that you really like Grisham and Crichton and Princeton and Childs, there's a lot of ones that I liked.
Cromwell.
It's just, it pulls you in, and the ones that really, I think when I started writing a book, 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of was going with Stephen King's, where it's like you start in the middle of a story and you're like, what the hell is going on? And so then you want to read it because you're like, well, I got to figure out why this guy's in a cafe being shot at, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, if the book didn't get me in the first 30 pages, I usually wouldn't continue.
Yeah, it's about 4 or 5 chapters in. If I'm not drawn in, I don't read the book,
which is hard. So like the ones that you don't want to read, but you had to for school, it was like really pushing it until I think I had to, and getting to our kids, talking about them, I had to take a step back and like, okay, what's the story telling me? What's the content? What's the purpose of the story? What are they trying to get here? And what's sad is when I was doing a lot of research for this podcast, I was amazed at what people write about and what's banned and things like that. But so with your kid, you already talked about one, the reward. Did you find that she carried on really well with reading after that and got more?
Not really. But it wasn't something that she was like absolutely against anymore. So she actually saw the value in it. She enjoyed it, and so that aversion to reading kind of dissipated somewhat. Whether she reads or not now, I don't know. She's out in California with her husband, and we talk periodically. But I don't know. I mean, it'd probably be very good for her because there are a lot of benefits to reading, right?
Yeah,
a lot of benefits to reading.
Well, that's the one thing is like when I really wanted to kind of break down the benefits, the pros and cons of reading in general. Yeah. Obviously for you, being a therapist, you understand that reading can actually improve your mental health, and,
it does, yeah.
The more you learn, the more you...
It increases your vocabulary.
Enhances your brain. It boosts your cognitive function, on there. It also really opens you up to more empathy. So when you're reading stories, I think the best class I ever took, and people ask me, like, why'd you take this? At Avila was African American Lit. There were, tons of black authors that I don't think I ever would have picked up just because they don't come across my desk. Or I never had a friend that's black tell me, oh, you should read this book. This is really good. This author's awesome.
I've never had that either, quite honestly.
And I was like, I don't think I've ever had anybody except for this one kid in sociology class. It was a great story because most of the people at Avila come from private schools and have good money. And then the ones that are there on scholarships, they had to work and earn their way. Yeah. And this one kid was to help my mom to help me get better at reading. We'd had the Saturday walk because we had to walk everywhere, and we'd walk 5 miles to the library, and we'd get 10 books, and
then carry all those 10 books 5 miles back.
Yeah, 5 miles back. And he goes, but it got to the point that I started going, not him, like this is him saying, because I started going almost every day because I started reading 2-3 books a day, and so that's how I stayed in shape, and I actually would be reading as I walk home, and he'd get bullied and stuff like that. But man, he was one of the smartest kids in that class because he had read so much, and he grew his brain and mind, and he had so much knowledge of the earth and how people are.
Well, and like all human knowledge is written down, right? You're not going to go on social media and be able to understand how an igneous rock forms, right?
Right.
You're not going to discover how a diode works because you watched Blue's Clues.
Yeah.
Love Blue's Clues, by the way, but it's a classic. But one of the things that's been happening is, back when we were kids with like cartoons and stuff on Saturday mornings, they were 30-minute episodes, right? The storyline was 30 minutes long for the full episode. Now, if you watch like Bluey, it's the storyline is between commercials, and then there's a new storyline, and then a new storyline, a new storyline. So one of the benefits of reading is that it slows your brain down, because with all the social media that we have, with all the videos and they're all a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, something like that.
Yeah.
And so it's engaging our brain super quick over and over and over. And our brain it's like a muscle. We train our brain to do certain things, and our brain is being trained to need entertainment quickly. And so by reading, you kind of force that to slow back down. As you slow the brain back down, the cognitive, like I said, cognitive function increases because it's not trying to get that dopamine hit all the time.
Right.
And you get to create, you get to develop your creativity. Like when I read, it's like I'm watching a movie. I can see it in my head. I can hear different voices in my head. I have like the characters and things like that. I have my vision of what they look like. I enjoy movies a lot, but reading is much more engaging and much more, it's satisfying to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a huge stress relief too. Like you said, it expands your knowledge and vocabulary. And also, like I said, it kind of gives you more of an idea of how the world works in different areas. So in that class, I'm reading a lot of stories of slaves that, got out of slavery. I read a lot of things like Frederick Douglass. I mean, he's a great writer, and I think I've read like 9 things of his now, and
nice.
And there's another couple other artists that wrote about voodooism in the South and things like that. It just really opened my mind up to more of how that time was, opposed to history books where it's like, the government's like, this is what I want you to know, versus what they actually lived through, and so you can get a better understanding
like a greater appreciation for different cultures.
And so when you get like books, and you can tell times like Shakespeare, really hard to read sometimes, but if you take the step back, kind of like the Bible, it's wow, man, it's kind of hard to read, kind of thing. But the more you do it, the better understanding you get of the situation. So usually by chapter 2 of Shakespeare, you got the flow of the language, you can really see it, understand it. And
it starts making more sense.
For me, Hamlet, I mean, I love Shakespeare. I mean, I've read, I think, almost everything he's put out just because I just loved it. I loved that time period. I liked the backgrounds when the movie Shakespeare in Love came out. I'm like, it just kind of like tainted my...
I mean, Shakespeare in Love is not Shakespeare.
I'm like tainted. I'm like my view of him. I'm like, no. I mean, it'd be funny if that's really how he wrote his stuff, but but it's just, it really opened my mind, and I found that my junior year, the teacher would have us read, and then we had to sit and talk, and her whole goal was to get us to argue and fight. And someone always left pissed off, and finally I called her out. I'm like, I know you're trying to get discussion and stuff, but I feel like you're promoting anger versus understanding. And of course she dismissed it, and so to mess with her, we all decided we're going to agree with anything and everything everyone says, no matter what. And it was I think it was The Pearl. That was the book we read.
Okay.
And
I remember that one.
It's a great story. And I
hadn't thought about that one in years. That's a great one.
Laugh because this guy Tom didn't read at all. He'd just make crap up, and he goes, "Yeah, man, I really liked when he dove down and had to dig through some poop to find that pearl." And of course, the teacher's like shaking her head, and I go, "Yeah, I know. I found that really interesting too." And it's like, and he had to like put it in his butt cheek to like clean it off and everything. And she's just shaking her head, and we had one girl that always had to be right, and she's just like tight in her mouth, and she's just like squinting, and she's like, "Arr!" And we went on like 10 minutes like that, all of us talking about poop and this pearl. And
Which totally fits you because you talk about poop all the freaking time.
I'm a nurse. The teacher finally just lost her shit. She's like, if you guys aren't going to engage, get the fuck out. And we're like, oh, no, damn, that turned fast. So, of course, we're like, okay, packed our bags and all, and started getting up and leave. And she's like, whoa, no, seriously, you can't leave. I'm like, well, you said we could.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just, I found that funny. And so with Kira and Quinn, because they were in that time where TV, iPad, stuff like that, I always made them go play. And I always try to make them read. And I try to make it fun, kind of thing. And so one cute thing for me is what I always looked forward to was bedtime. It was my favorite thing with my kids, to sit down and read to them. And it's just how much they got excited because I do feel my silly voices, and I'd make it really animated and have fun. And it's
I wish I did that more with my kids. I did that, but not as often as I would have liked.
And it was really weird because I really felt like Brenna would want to do that. And then she did, obviously. But I thought she would be like the one to like really want to do that. And so it just kind of surprised me that I was the one doing it.
Yeah.
And I think it was interesting because my kids could see that I would struggle with words, and and I generally, if I read, I don't know a word, I look it up, so I understand what it means and how it fits in the story.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, the hardest thing to read is bad English. So when I was doing Harry Potter, Hagrid was so hard to read out loud with an accent. I was like, I can't even do it. But I'd be like doing my Harry Potter. I'd be like, hello, Harry, how are you doing? And Weasley, but Hermione always sound like a dude pretending to be a girl. It's like, hey, Harry, how are you? Kind of thing.
Yeah, that's not.
But I got really good at it. And I'm not doing as dramatic as I really should for the podcast. But so I found myself actually correcting Hagrid as I'm reading out loud because I'm like, oh god, this is so. And Kira's like, I don't understand what you're saying. I'm like, yeah, I know, I don't.
Yeah, I don't either. No.
But it was something I always look forward to.
Like,
and it actually sparked as an adult wanting to read more. And that's and books in general, I really fucking love when it's deep and foreshadowing and leads in. And I'll tell you, man, Rawlings is so good at her foreshadowing, and you go back and reread all the Harry Potters, like, man, she really gave you everything in the first book, just like Game of Thrones. Like, everything you need to know happens in the first book. Like, you literally know what's going to happen. Like, I knew Brandon was going to be the new king by the end of the book. We don't know for sure because the bastard hasn't written the last one.
Right.
He still needs to write it. And I'm like, write the damn last book. But it was interesting because I just really enjoyed that kind of thing, and just getting them to read it. And Quinn, we had to do graphic novels, and
that brings up that question. What do you think? Because like when I was a kid, my parents were never about comics or graphic novels or anything like that. They thought that wasn't literature.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, it's a lot more popular now.
Well, and the great thing with graphic novels for kids that struggle with reading, it actually engages their imagination. So if they're struggling with content and seeing how it plays out, like you said, you get this picture in your head, what they look like, and the environment. Well, if a kid's imagination is stifled because of TV, and that's all they do, their imagination is just kind of there. So you really, I think the novels help them read a good story, but also see it. And so they can actually understand it a little better. And that's why you're seeing more, books coming out. I can't think of the kid books right now. But like Quinn hated reading until we did the zombie apocalypse stories about teenagers surviving.
Oh, yeah.
And it's comical. And it has like just some pictures.
Yeah.
But it's like they describe it and then it kind of shows a picture on the next page and stuff like that. And that's why you're seeing books like Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, they're starting to add pictures in them.
Yeah.
And like maps, because people are like, man, it's really hard to visualize where these people are on the map.
That's one thing that Louis L'Amour does in his books. There's always maps in the beginning so you can see what area of the country he's actually. And one of the things he would do is he would actually go and he would go and see the actual places that he's describing in the book so that he could be accurate, you know.
Yeah.
And so, but with the graphic novels and stuff, it's like that's one of the things that I think is really beneficial is you're seeing the artists, you know, the author's kind of perspective
interpretation
of what they imagine, which to me helps draw you into their mindset when they were writing the story, you know.
Well, you know, in Tolkien, writing Lord of the Rings, I mean, that guy was so detailed. I mean, he'd spend like 6 pages describing a brooch. And it was just like, it's killing me. and it's kind of how Lincoln and Charles are too, with the relic and stuff like that. But like down the road, you understand why they had to do that, you know. And it really gave you a better appreciation for that, and your imagination grows with it, you know, and stimulates from that. And so for me, I think comics are great. I think the comics, you know, like I said, give a visualization of what the author wanted to do, and then the more graphic novels for that middle age of going before. Because like for me, probably for you too, like the little shapes or the books of all the people were different shapes, and it just had like basic stories. And I think for my kids, it was Elephant and Pig.
Oh, those books.
Yeah.
I'm like, shapes?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Well, I can't remember the name of the books that I read when I was younger, but those were like, there weren't very many graphic novels growing up.
Well, I mean, like growing up, like Frog and Toad.
Yeah, Frog and Toad. There we go.
How I Met Your Mother, or not How I Met Your Mother, but Are You My Mother?
That's a show.
That's a great show, but yeah, Are You My Mother? You know, that kind of stuff. And of course, Dr. Seuss, but those are basically like comic books.
Seuss, yeah. Well, and Dr. Seuss is great because he's big words and rhyming and
alliteration
and it's like, holy crap, this is hard. Which again for me, that was hard to read out loud with my kids because I struggle sometimes with talking in general. So when I have patients to say I'm hard of hearing, I'm like, oh, we're perfect. I'm hard of talking, so we're good, kind of thing.
Yeah. One of the things that kind of worries me with the graphic novel thing, not worries me because all of my kids are grown now, but like some of them are pretty risque.
Yeah,
and there's some,
and we'll get
nudity and
and we'll
sex and stuff in them.
We'll kind of talk about that with the banned books part later on. So I want to kind of end with the banned books on there, and I think also too, it really does help in general with your analytical thinking and some social skills. I did see the challenge from going graphic novels to regular novels.
Yeah.
Was if your kid was struggling with content because they were more focused on the pictures, then they had a harder time transitioning to full books.
Yeah.
So
there's positives and negatives.
Yeah, I think with it really is a good blend. So what we try to do with Kieran Quinn is we'd have them, okay, you could read one graphic and then you had to do a regular one, but we picked something short. So like, 15 pages, 20 pages. That way Kieran Quinn got comfortable with reading and doing it. And, Brenna was awesome. My ex-wife was awesome at encouraging Kira to read this. Oh, I found this one. This is really good. And then, we nurtured it and poured water on it, and let's read all these books. And then she was really good at reading them with her, so they could talk and stuff like that. And it's great. I mean, I think Kira struggled until she found Hunger Game, and she really
got into that one.
Games, and
I think that's key. Is there's a lot of different genres, a lot of different kinds of books, and the authors write different ways, right? And so, being able to encourage kids to explore different storylines, different subjects, things like that, until they find what really makes them, excited about the reading. So, like, I love the sci-fi, I love the Western, I like historical fiction.
Yeah.
What's his name? Cromwell. I think he's the one that did, not The Last Kingdom. There's a couple of TV shows that are based on his books now, but the historical fiction I think is awesome because it's based on real people, but it's got that spin from that, the creativity.
Yeah, I think that's why I like Crichton a lot, because he does throw a lot of science into it. and also a lot of facts, and he does a lot of research based on it, and then throws in the fictional part.
You want to hear something a little embarrassing? Not totally embarrassing, but a little bit.
You were reading his book, and he sat next to you?
No.
Okay.
I've actually read a couple of romance novels.
Oh, God. To better understand women, I picked up this romance
seriously,
novel.
and that was the motivation. It's like, okay, women love romance novels. I want to understand women as much as I can, and so it's like, what are they reading? What do they like? But yeah, that was the reason why I did it, and now I'm addicted to it. I'm kidding. No, but I've read like 2 or 3.
Well, okay, so that goes into the cons of reading,
Mm-hmm.
or the detrimental part of reading, and most people are like, well, there can't be anything detrimental to reading. I go, well, I got a great example of 2 in my life that definitely hurt my life. One was my dad.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go really quick. So the big thing with the negatives of reading would be over-identification with the fictional character. People that get so lost in the book that they lose reality, and get to the point that it becomes unrealistic to real life, and also adds emotional stress. So a great example is 50 Shades of Grey. Really,
you mean the book that no women admit that they read it, but they all read it?
Yeah. And what's funny is
because it's basically porn.
There were some therapists that were like women that were struggling in their marriage, like, oh, go read this. It might stimulate, that
some of the fantasy and connection,
with your husband and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Not talking about like go choke them out or anything weird, but I've never read the book or seen the movie. So, but my ex-wife, she would flat out, she's like, I'm not going to read that crap because the grammar, it's written at a 5th grade level. And I just like opened it one day. I was like, wow, this is really hard to read because it's just not written very well at all. And that's why it was such a go movie for Hollywood, because it was simplistic, super easy to do, and they didn't care who they put in that movie.
Yeah, but it's a good point, though, that like we can get so drawn into a storyline that it becomes distracting from our real lives.
Yeah.
And where we become resentful that our lives are not like the character that we identify with.
Well, and you get to the point that, so my dad, before he left, he Star Trek. Every Star Trek book, he would come home, go right to the room, and read. Never play with us, never engage. And it was disheartening as a kid. It's like, I want to play catch with Dad. I want to, help me ride a bike, kind of thing. And so for me, I think subconsciously, that's why I fought reading for so long, because
there's a resentment for it.
Yeah, totally. And so for him, when he gave me all those books, it was like a giant slap in the face. It's like, I use these to neglect you and not spend time with you. And James could see that I'm kind of getting teared up. So
yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're okay.
So yeah, so it was definitely a struggle. And out of anger, I donated those books, and I felt now very guilty for doing that, because later on, as I got older, I realized he was just sharing something he loved, and it was actually his way of apologizing to me. So anyway.
No, thanks for sharing that, dude.
So yeah, that was hard. Going from there, and then when my ex-wife, in the gaming episode, we kind of talk about how we got in this perpetual cycle where she'd come home, just wanted to read, to relax, to shift from the day. I understand it because I was being triggered from my dad. And so I'd go downstairs and do the video games. And then when she would come down, she's like, hey, do you want to do something? I'm like, nope, you wanted to read, and I'm going to play my games. And so the detrimental part of it is you can neglect your spouse or your partner if you read too much. You're not going out and engaging with them and doing things. And, and luckily with marriage counseling, I learned my mistake and where we went wrong with that. And And it was a good lesson for me to understand where she had to read, to download, to get away from the day, to help her be prepared to spend time with me. But then I was just too butthurt at the time.
Yeah. Well, and that may have been why your dad would go and read, because he was just shutting down and trying to shut off his brain. I know for me, that's been like TV sometimes. And there were times that my kids wanted to play, and I was just so stressed.
Yeah.
But I'm really sorry that happened, man.
No, that's good. I mean, he basically admitted that he was miserable, and that was the only thing.
That was his escape.
Yeah, the only thing he liked was reading, and instead of finding other outlets. But so for a long time, I just, I always, if my kids want to do something, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go play. I always put it down. I learned from marriage counseling to put the book down, close the video game, spend time with your partner, stuff like that. And those are really the only two detrimental things. I mean, it's, like we said, coming too much like the character and unrealistic expectations of life and things like that. And so do you have any negative impacts from reading, or?
Well, I mean, I think part of the, so for me, part of the negative impact of reading is that I don't do it anymore very, very much. I haven't finished a book in years. So, like, my second wife for my birthday, I think it was either Christmas or my birthday, she got one of my favorite books for me, because I had it years ago, and then it was, like, torn up, thrown away, something, I don't know. But it was The Final Encyclopedia, it's the name of the book. And I was ecstatic to get it, because I talked about it, and, it's one of my favorite stories, and I'm a third of the way through, and I got it a couple years ago.
Nice.
Still sitting on my nightstand.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I have to admit, like, I read so much in nursing school, and in the summer I'd take 9 hours at JUCO and 9 hours at Avila, so I was taking 18 hours in the summer.
Jeez.
And so I was just read, and before I was going through Game of Thrones, couldn't put it down. I'd do 2-3 hours, just loved it. And I've literally been on. So I graduated in 2017. I started that book probably in 2014. I still have like 100 pages left.
No, it's true though, because like when I got out of the military, I went back to school. I was in school basically 6 years straight, summers included, and I was a single dad. And then I started in the master's program, and then I got married. Then bought a house, sold all this stuff, and it's like life gets so busy, we give up on some of the stuff that we're excited about and that we're passionate about sometimes, and so there's almost a resentment that happens because we don't have time for the things we enjoy.
Well, and it's hard. I'm like, I need to finish this book, but part of me too is like he hasn't written the last book, so it's like I don't want to catch up and then
not know what's going on.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, well, let's go with the Game of Thrones version TV show. Yeah, which now he says he might change because he really wasn't happy with how it ended, But yeah, I mean, I think for me, I mean, it really was hard because when I was in school, I'd have to read and stuff. But what's awesome is Kira and Quinn saw my ethic and my drive to achieve more and read, and actually having to read and take time with my kids. So I would go to the pool, I'd be reading, and so I'd still be outside enjoying the sun with them, and they'd be playing, and then I got to read this chapter, then I put it down and then play with them for 15 minutes, and then I have to go back to reading. And so I think that helped my kids also have a little more desire to read on top of it too. And, and kind of go from there. And it's such a good bonding thing with them. And I just want to finish that book. Yeah. And every time I sit down to do it, I'm like, man, I really need to mow the lawn. I got this, clean this, and that, and that. But I've never, ever, ever read a book that I said I wish I didn't. So, yeah, I mean, I think, like we talked in Discipline, how I think in general, people are reading less. I mean, you just proved it. I pulled up some stats on that, on reading in general, and it's funny because and this is all done in 2021. So over 75% of people in the United States have said they haven't read a book in a year.
Ouch.
75.
Ouch.
It's like, holy crap. And then out of those that did read, 65 read hardcover books still, 30 did ebooks, and then 23 did audiobooks, which still technically counts.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's this kind of trend that's been going on since we were kids to now where reading is becoming less and less common.
Because of technology, baby.
Yep. It
Social
definitely has a thing, but like print, which I prefer a hard copy book. I like the tactile feel and the smell of the book, all that kind of stuff. But like 65% of adults read a print book in the past year.
Okay.
About 30% read an ebook and about 23% listened to an audiobook. But when it comes to kids, so here's I think this comes from Pew Research, but like 9-year-olds in 2020. In 2020, 42% reported reading for fun almost every day, down from 53% in 2012. So that's a 10% decline in 8 years of kids reading. You have 13-year-olds who, the percentage of 13-year-olds, and this is kind of scary a little bit, who never or hardly ever read for fun, went from 29% in 2020, rose to 29% in 2020, which is up 8% from 1984. So kids they're not engaging in that way as much anymore, and it's a little bit scary. The importance of reading, the benefits of reading, the if we're watching these kids who are they're not dumb, they're smart kids.
Yeah.
But it's like they're just not engaging anymore, so that their intellect isn't developing, their vocabulary is not developing, and they're just relying on social media.
Yeah, and I think the sad thing is because of that, that's why they're so easily influenced right now. And that's why I think we saw that movement get so much steam behind it, because people were like, oh, well, this is what I'm being told, it must be true. Where, when you get your kid to read more and step outside the box and read different types of genre and history books and things like that, it does open their mind, opens their thinking, and they learn to say, this is past the smell test.
Right. Yeah, that critical thinking ability, right?
Yeah, and it's like, is that politician just full of shit, or are they actually true? And
yes, they are.
And it's sad how easily they can just like manipulate and lie, and because people are like, well, it must be true.
Yeah, like one of the things that really bothered me a couple of years ago is there was an unnamed source. You keep on hearing these unnamed sources. It's like you can make it up, but one of the benefits of like back in the day reading newspapers or reading different articles and things is you have to cite your sources when you write papers. You have to cite your sources when you're writing articles and stuff. And now this trend of these unnamed sources is what they're saying is that I can make up anything, claim it as an unnamed source, and you're going to believe me now.
Yeah, and that's honestly
because that critical thinking aspect is waning.
Well, and that's what's amazing. Like I had a teacher, my first English teacher in college. He goes, just because it's black and white in front of you doesn't mean it's true.
Right.
Because anybody can say whatever they want and put it in there. And if they don't cite a source, and really one of the best things he had us do is we actually had to pick a research paper, tear it apart, and actually see what the full research was, and then how they took their research and twisted the truth.
Yeah.
And so one was, I found an article on how smoking cures cancer. Well, being in healthcare now, I know that whatever happens in the study, they have to report it in the study. Well, when I did my research, someone was getting chemo for cancer, for lung cancer, while they were doing the smoking study. And so they were able to claim that smoking cured cancer because the guy went into remission during that, and they left out the part that he was on chemo.
That's horrible.
Just to sell more cigarettes back in the 80s.
That is horrible.
But I think the big thing is where society's had a big downfall is the book banning. I know book banning has happened since books have been written.
Right, right.
The Bible's been banned, throughout time. And so I was like, I'm going to look at different states, and I wanted to see what Kansas had. And luckily, they don't have too many. I mean, it's like a few
Yeah.
here and there. But the ones that kind of surprised me, and then I did break it down into liberal states, conservative states, because I was wondering, are we banning some of the same?
Hold on, I have to feed my habit.
Click. It's not a beer. It's a monster.
Not a beer.
It's a monster.
Bad habit from the Army.
So I did find it really was interesting that in more of the conservative states, you know, the logic was to protect the kids, the innocence, allowing parents to decide what their kids read versus being told what they should read.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, some of these graphic novels that are written for the LGBT community are very inappropriate, you know, and so
Yeah,
those.
it's not just those.
I know I got a list. I was going to go through.
Yeah, but yeah, go on.
And so, and the other thing is basically books that are themed that discuss race and racism and like the dimensional thought and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed that a lot of it was more one-sided versus all racism. So
Yeah.
like, were they racist towards, you know, whites? Were they racist towards blacks? Were they racist towards Mexican? I found that the books that were being banned, some of them were actually talking about the persecution, what they went through, and I'm talking about everybody's race, you know, across the board when it came to this. And I found it very interesting that those books were being banned, and I found that some of Frederick Douglass's books were banned, and just because it talked about the hard times of slavery, and they don't want them to understand it. And I did talk about that earlier, that it helped me have a greater understanding, so I didn't like that. But the one I definitely do agree with is sexual content and then sexual violence like rape and stuff like that.
Well, and especially at younger ages or you know, younger categories of readers.
And generally, most of the books that are banned are like the graphic novels and before, but there are ones that, you know, the Wallflower book, like some states have Romeo and Juliet banned because of teen suicide.
Mm-hmm.
13 Reasons Why, you know, it helps people understand suicide, but it also kind of glorified suicide in a way. And you know, that was a huge topic when it came out in Blue Valley, and a lot of people mocked it and found it, made it a joke almost.
Almost, yeah.
But then you saw this huge influx of kids going, I'm suicidal. I want to kill myself. Pay attention to me. Pay attention to me now, kind of thing. Instead of
the actual
helping them
help that
get
they
through
need.
that. And it was frustrating. So then I went to the liberal side and looked up states that have books banned on the liberal side, and it was interesting because it was more government books. So 1984, Animal Farm, that basically helps educate how government dictates history, how politicians become fat and greedy. So I found that was really interesting that they did that.
Did they ban Tolstoy?
What?
Tolstoy?
Oh, I didn't see that one.
He wrote War and Peace.
No, War and Peace is not banned.
Okay, that's good.
But of Mice and Menace.
Really?
Due to racial languages.
Oh my gosh.
The betrayal of mental illness. So the one
main
character is mentally retarded.
Oh my goodness.
And so they didn't like how it portrayed him, but you know, it's actually a really good book.
But it's supposed to be thought provoking.
Yes.
It's supposed to get you to think about life and about your perspectives on. That's the whole point of these books, is to create this ability to think through, right?
Right. That's why a lot of the book banning has honestly been bad, because there's actually a couple on this list that did talk about rape and how the person's life was destroyed after it, and ultimately.
Now, I don't think like a 10-year-old should read a book like that, but
correct.
You know,
but I'm
senior in high school, college, that kind of thing.
And these are more books. It's interesting that the books that they're picking are the ones that are influential in critical thinking and open your mind to being more understanding of the past. And so, like Mark Twain's books, obviously for racial slurs and language.
Banning Mark Twain books.
Yeah, Huckleberry Finn specifically. Kite Runner, portrays rape
Really?
and the conflict with it. To Kill a Mockingbird, because they talk about, I think they hang somebody in the trial, but the whole point of the book is the end of that book.
Yeah.
That drove it home for a lot of people. And so it just blew my mind that they're doing that. It just, and I guess one of the best stories that I noticed it was banned was The Absolute True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. It deals a lot with LGBT conflict, teen suicide, alcohol abuse, and the struggles within.
You mean life?
Yeah, life.
For a lot of teenagers.
And so it's just kind of like, why are we banning these books that, and honestly, it's just banned in the schools. It's not, obviously not banned by. I don't think anything. I didn't look to see if anything was actually truly banned from being in the United States.
I'm sure there are. I haven't looked that up either. But I think really what it comes down to is, as parents, we have our own experiences with books. But as we've gotten older and as we've experienced more life and as we've gotten more of that, exposure to needing critical thinking, seeing the benefit of having a wider vocabulary, being able to analyze and view life from different perspectives, I think it needs to be encouraged that we encourage our kids, our grandkids eventually, to read as much as possible and have some of the classics out there. Like, I actually have a list of the 100 greatest classics.
Oh, nice.
That was compiled from 100 different websites, lists of 100 greatest classics. So,
send that to me. I can add it to the.
Yeah. And so it's got like Don Quixote on there and Frankenstein and War and Peace, things like that, and some more modern classics as well. But there are reasons why some of the greatest minds read some of the greatest books.
Yeah.
And if we lose sight of why reading is so important, and it doesn't matter if it's a hardcover, digital book, audiobook, whatever, but you're expanding your mind, and I worry that that's being lost. If you don't study history, you're doomed to repeat it. Well, that means you have to be able to read history.
Yeah, and hopefully it's not changed too much. Yeah, it's funny because my history teacher, it's funny, the teachers that I really loved, I mean, they really had big impacts, and he had this book, like his desk was covered with like 70 books, and he just threw them all in the middle. And when he was done, he goes, you take all that, and you're going to read all that, and you're still only going to know 30% of what really happened in history, because history is dictated by the men that control it.
Yeah.
And that's why 1984 was such a scary fucking book, because it literally showed the worker erasing history and changing it to the other continent that they were at war with, and then Big Brother's always watching kind of thing. And it's sad that, as a joke, as Gen Xers, we always would say Big Brother's always watching. These kids are like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And so I definitely think it, if you need help encouraging, I think honestly, to get your kids engaged in reading, 100%, I think reading to them when they're young is how you do it. I mean, I think that's really how you get them enjoy the reading, embrace it. My kids hated it, and when I started doing the voices and reading to them at night and making it fun, and I could build that imagination, then I think that's when they took off and started reading.
Yeah.
And I find most of my reading is just informational stuff now.
And if anybody wants a perspective on why books are so important, even just the book, or not the book, but the movie Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah.
I mean, the book is awesome, but there's a movie that came out just a few years ago, same story, that kind of thing. And the firefighters were actually burning books, and how some of the firefighters were, instead of burning them, they were saving them, starting to read them, and how much it changed them, and they become like enemies of the state. I mean, it's a dystopian future kind of story, but man, it is so important. It is so important to keep reading.
Yeah, and definitely encourage it. And I think the big thing is I had a father figure that made his kids do book reports in the summer. They had to do 2, and I'm like, oh, that's such a great idea. And obviously,
that's better than paying people if you don't have the money. We can edit out.
Yeah, I'll edit it out. It's just, here's my pen. Yeah, final thought.
Final thought: read it on the toilet.
Yeah.
Don't say that. So it's just saying. All
Biden.
right, well, you find a way to take it from that point to that final thought, and let's end it.
Okay.
What's the? What would you say is as a closing thought? Where do you read the most?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of toilet time, of course, because you just kind of sit there and it's like 20 minutes later. Instead of scrolling on TikTok or Facebook or whatever, I mean, definitely listen to us, but yeah, throw a book in there. Even if that's your 20 minutes, throw a book in there.
Yeah, I'm. For me, that's like quick articles. I can do that, but like books, like I want to finish because I usually do chapter reading.
Yeah,
and so I really hate ending in the middle of a page kind of thing because I find I reread it like 19 times.
But see, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
If you get into it, you want to keep reading.
Yeah. And that's the key. Is just finding something that your kids love and appreciate and nurture it and grow with it. And
Yeah.
That's how you get them into reading. And you know what? I challenge you.
Me?
To read a book this year.
What if I write one?
That works too.
Okay.
But you still have to read it.
All right. Yeah. No. And I've got two that I would definitely want to finish. So I haven't taken a real vacation in a couple of years because I've just been working so much. And one of the things that I need to do is I need to slow down. I need to take some time off and bring the books that I want to read with me so I can actually just sit and enjoy.
And I will do the same thing. I'll finish my book.
And I'll send you that list of the 100 greatest books.
All right. Yeah. It'll be down in there.
Maybe we can share it on the website too.
We will. Everywhere.
Sounds good. All right, man.
Hey, everybody. I want to thank you guys for joining us today. It was a lot of fun. I hope you took some takeaway from this. I'm sorry I cried.
Don't ever apologize
Luckily,
for that.
you didn't see me.
Dude, that's a sign of a real man. No, seriously, it's a sign of a real man.
And a beard.
Well, yeah, join us next week, though, when we talk about diapers, duct tape, and daditude. Really, we're just all guessing, kiddo, where we talk about like how our parents affected us and how we affect our kids. Remember that this is for our entertainment purposes, but we hope that you enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from our community so we can grow and be better.
Visit our website, twodadsgenxedition.com, and you'll be able to get access for exclusive behind-the-scenes kind of content and discounts on merchandise, things like that. But definitely hit that like and subscribe button.
All right. Did we two dads yet?
I think we're two dads the shit.
We two dads that shit.
Whoop. Okay.
All right. Stay classy, Kansas City.